Hello, Pack. Pull up close. Tonight's story starts in the dark, on a road no one takes in winter, with a woman who had been given exactly one thing and told to disappear with it. The cloak was wool, heavy, someone else's. She didn't know whose. She walked for 3 hours before she found them. 5 pups, half buried in snow, barely breathing. She didn't know then that they belonged to the most powerful pack on the continent. She didn't know that the rival King Scouts were already watching the tree line, and she didn't know that the man who'd sent her into the cold with nothing would spend the next 14 days learning what nothing actually costs. Let's begin. Her name was Orla. She had been a healer's apprentice in the Morvain pack for 4 years, long enough to know which roots to boil for fever, long enough to know which silences in a hall meant danger, and long enough to understand that when the Alpha King's Council delivered a verdict, there was no appeal. The verdict had been delivered on a Tuesday. She had arrived in the Morvain pack not as a mate, not as a chosen companion, but as something the Bond had decided on without consulting anyone, including her. She had felt it the first time she crossed the Morvain gate, a pull in the center of her chest, like a thread being drawn taut. She had assumed it was anxiety. She had been wrong. The Alpha King's name was Calum. She had seen him twice in 4 years. Once at a distance, crossing the courtyard in winter gear, and once up close in the council chamber on the day they told her she was being removed from the territory. He had not spoken during that meeting. He had sat at the far end of a long stone table and looked at his hands, and the council had spoken for him, and Orla had stood in the center of the room and understood that the thread she'd felt for 4 years was being cut by people who had never felt it. Incompatible with the pack's succession needs, they had said, no formal bond declared, no claim established. The healer's position is to be reassigned. She had not cried. She had asked for her medical kit. They had given her the kit and a cloak. The cloak was too large, wool, smelling faintly of pine resin, and something she couldn't name. She would not learn until much later that it had been taken from the hook outside Calum's private study. She had not known that when she walked out of the gate. She had not known anything, really. Just the cold and the road, and the particular silence of a forest that had decided to keep its own counsel. She found the pups 2 hours after the gate closed behind her. She almost missed them. The snow had drifted high against the roots of a fallen oak, and what she saw first was a shape that didn't belong, too rounded, too deliberate. She stopped, listened. Then she heard it. A sound so thin and high, it was barely sound at all. More like the idea of a cry. She was down on her knees before she'd made a conscious decision to move. 5 of them. Newborns, or close enough. Eyes still sealed, fur matted with cold, and something darker that she identified as blood. A 6th shape at the edge of the hollow, still. She pressed 2 fingers to its throat and found nothing and set it gently aside. The other 5 were breathing, but only just. She had her kit. She had the cloak. She worked for an hour in the dark, in the snow, with numb hands and a torch she'd wedged into a tree root. She packed the pups against her body under the cloak and felt them begin to shiver rather than lie still, which was better. Shivering meant trying. She could work with trying. She did not think about Calum. She thought about temperature and weight and breath rate and whether the nearest shelter was the abandoned mill she'd passed on the road or the rock formation another half-mile north that would at least break the wind. The mill. She chose the mill. She got there as the snow started again. She had the pups stable by dawn. She had made a nest of her cloak and the driest of the mill's old grain sacks. And she had 5 small bodies pressed together in the center of it, breathing in unison, and she sat beside them, with her back against the stone wall and her hands wrapped around her own knees, and allowed herself, for the first time, to feel how cold she was. She filed it away. There was wood. There was a fireplace, half collapsed but functional. She would be warmer by mid-morning. She was feeding the fire when she heard the horses. She did not run. Running was not something she had the energy for, and besides, she had 5 pups who could not run at all, and she was not leaving them. She picked up the iron poker from beside the hearth, which was not much of a weapon but was better than nothing, and she turned to face the door. It opened. The man who stepped through it was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the kind of riding gear that spoke of money spent on quality rather than display. He had dark hair, a close-trimmed beard, and gray eyes that assessed the room in a single pass. The fire, the pups, the poker, her. And then settled on her face with an expression that was not hostile. Not hostile, but not warm either. Calculating. The kind of calculating that came from someone who made large decisions regularly and had learned to do it quickly. "You're not Morvain," he said. "I was," she said. "As of yesterday, I'm not." He looked at the pups. Something shifted in his expression. Not softness exactly, but recognition. He crouched down without asking permission and looked at them more carefully. And she let him because the poker was still in her hand, and she was watching his hands, which were open. "These are Morvain pups," he said. "I know. You're keeping them alive." "I'm trying." He looked up at her. "Why?" She thought about it for a moment, genuinely. "Because they were dying," she said. That seemed like the relevant fact. The man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My name is Soren. I hold the Thornvale territory east of the Vale boundary." She had heard of the Thornvale territory. Everyone had. It was the second largest pack holding on the continent, and its alpha king had a reputation for being either very reasonable or very dangerous, depending on who you asked and what they had wanted from him. "Orla," she said, "I held nothing. I was a healer." "Were," he said. "Were," she agreed. He looked at the pups again, then back at her. "The mill isn't safe for long. There's a Morvain patrol 2 miles south. They've been looking for something, and I suspect it's these." He paused. "I have a camp. It's warm. You and the pups would be welcome." She studied him. He held the scrutiny without flinching. "What does welcome cost?" she asked. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Nothing you haven't already paid," he said. She thought about it for exactly as long as it took one of the pups to make a small, urgent sound in its sleep. Then she said, "All right." The Thornvale camp was a half-hour's ride east, set in the shelter of a pine ridge where the wind couldn't reach. It was not a military camp. It was a traveling court, a dozen tents arranged around a central fire with horses and scouts, and a woman who turned out to be Soren's head of household, a compact, sharp-eyed person named Brea, who took one look at Orla and the pups and said, "Get her something hot and find me more grain sacks." No one asked Orla any questions for the first 2 hours. They gave her food, dry clothes, a tent with a brazier, and left her alone with the pups, which was exactly what she needed. By the second day, the pups had names, not hers to give, but she called them by color and size for her own organizational purposes, and Brea started using the same system. And by the 3rd day, the entire camp was calling them 1 through 5, which was not romantic but was functional. Soren came to check on them each morning. He did not hover. He looked, asked 1 or 2 precise questions, listened to the answers, and left. He was the kind of man who made his interest known through attention rather than words, and Orla found herself cataloging his habits the way she cataloged symptoms, not because she was looking for something, but because her mind worked that way. He always came in the morning, never the evening. He asked about the pups before he asked about her. When she said something that surprised him, he went very still for a moment before responding. He had a scar along his left jaw that he didn't explain and she didn't ask about. On the fourth day, he sat down across the fire from her and said, "The Morvain patrol found the mill." She looked up from the pup she was examining. "They know the pups were there," he said. "They found the sixth one." She absorbed this. And they're asking questions about who took the others. He paused. "They'll come to me eventually. The mill is technically Thornvale adjacent territory. My scouts were in the area. What will you tell them?" He looked at her steadily. "That depends on what you want me to tell them." She looked back down at the pup in her hands, who had opened his eyes for the first time that morning, pale, unfocused, but open. She thought about the council chamber and the long stone table and Calem's hands flat against the surface, not looking at her. "Tell them the truth," she said. "I found them. I kept them alive. I'm still keeping them alive. If they want them back, they can send someone with the ability to feed 5 newborns and the sense not to leave them in a snowdrift in the first place." Soren was quiet for a moment. "That's a direct answer," he said. "I'm a direct person." "I've noticed." He paused. "The Morvain Alpha King will hear about this." "I know. It may create a political situation. I know that too." He studied her. She met his gaze and held it. The fire between them snapped once, settled. "All right," he said, and he left. In Morvain, the news arrived on the 5th day. The scout's report was delivered in the council chamber, and Calem heard it from the head of the long stone table where he had sat while the council spoke for him 6 days ago. He heard it without moving. His hands were flat on the table. 5 pups from a contested litter, the ones they had sent 3 patrols out to find, were alive. They had been found by a woman on the road east of the gate. She had kept them alive through the night and into the following days. She was currently in the Thornvale camp. The scout paused, then added, as if uncertain whether it was relevant, "She was wearing your cloak, sir, the wool one from the study hook." Calem said nothing. The council waited. He said, still without moving, "What is the Thornvale Alpha's position?" "He's offered her shelter," the scout said carefully, "and the pups. He hasn't made any formal claim, but he's present with her. The camp reports say he visits every morning." Another silence. "Send a formal inquiry," Calem said. "Request the return of the pups. Standard diplomatic language." "And the woman?" the council elder asked. Calem looked at his hands. "She's not Morvain," he said. "That was the council's determination." The elder nodded. The meeting continued. Calem sat at the head of the table and felt something he had been successfully not feeling for 4 years begin to make itself known in the way that suppressed things always eventually did, not loudly, just persistently, like a sound in a room that you can't locate and can't stop hearing. The Thornvale camp received the formal inquiry on the 6th day. Orla read it over Brea's shoulder, which Brea permitted because she had decided with the efficiency of someone who made quick and permanent assessments of people that Orla was trustworthy. The inquiry was politely worded, formally structured, and asked for the return of the pups to Morvain custody at the earliest convenience. It did not mention Orla by name. It did not mention the cloak. "Convenient," Orla said. "Diplomatically convenient," Brea said, with the particular tone of someone who found diplomatic convenience professionally fascinating. Soren composed the reply himself. Orla didn't read it, but Brea told her later that it was equally polite, formally structured, and noted that the pups were currently in the care of a skilled healer and would be returned when they were stable enough to travel safely, which would be at the healer's determination, not the council's. The reply did not mention Orla by name either, but it made her the decision maker, which was not nothing. She thought about that for a long time that evening, sitting with 1 through 5 arranged along her thighs like a row of breathing, warm, increasingly demanding small creatures. One had started trying to nurse against her thumb. She had found a solution involving a soft cloth and warm broth that was working adequately. She thought about Soren's reply. She thought about the word healer, used without qualification, as if it were a title that required no pack affiliation to be valid. She thought about the thread in her chest that had gone quiet when she walked out of the Morvain gate. Not severed. She thought, but muffled. Like something wrapped in wool. She thought about the cloak. She was still wearing it. On the 7th day, Soren asked her to walk with him. They went along the pine ridge where the snow was packed hard and the wind had dropped to almost nothing. He walked at a pace that matched hers without adjusting noticeably, which she catalogued without comment. "The Morvain Council is going to send a representative," he said, "probably within the week. They want the pups, and they want to understand the situation." "The situation," she said, "you, in my camp, with their pups." He paused, "wearing the Alpha King's cloak." She stopped walking. He stopped too, half a step ahead of her, and turned. "You knew," she said. Brea recognized the weave. "It's a specific wool from the Caldermere region. Morvain sources it exclusively." He paused. "She told me on the 2nd day." Orla looked at the tree line. The pines were very still. "He didn't give it to me," she said. "Someone put it in the pile of things they gave me on the way out. I don't think he knew." "Maybe," Soren said, "or maybe he knew and couldn't say it directly." She thought about Telem at the end of the table, his hands flat, not looking at her. "What do you want from this?" she asked. Not unkindly, directly. Soren was quiet for a moment, which she had learned meant he was choosing words carefully rather than stalling. "The pups are a political asset," he said. "A contested litter, kept alive by someone the Morvain pack discarded. That's a story that travels. It changes the shape of the relationship between our territories." He paused. "I want you to understand that before I say the rest." "Say the rest." "I also think you're exceptional," he said. "And I think Morvain made a mistake. And I think if you wanted to stay in Thornvale, not as an asset, not as a political piece, but as someone who belongs here, that would be its own separate offer." She looked at him. He held the look without flinching, as he always did. "You're not going to tell me there's a bond," she said. "No," he said, "there isn't. Not the way you mean." "Then what is it?" "Respect," he said, "and interest, and the honest belief that you deserve better than a wool cloak and a road in the dark." She was quiet for a long moment. The pines held still around them. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded once. "That's all I'm asking." On the 9th day, the Morvain representative arrived. He was not a council elder. He was not a formal diplomatic envoy. He was Kylem. He came with 2 guards and no advance notice, which was either a diplomatic breach or a deliberate choice, and Orla suspected the latter when she saw the look on Brea's face. The look of someone who had been watching a situation develop and had just seen it accelerate past the point of orderly management. Orla was in the pup tent when he arrived. She knew he was there before anyone told her, which she did not examine closely. She finished what she was doing, checking Tu's weight, which had increased enough to be encouraging. And then she stood up, straightened the cloak, and went out to meet him. He was standing in the center of the camp's main clearing. He was taller than she remembered. Or perhaps she had only seen him sitting before. He was wearing riding gear, travel-worn, and he looked like a man who had ridden hard and was now making himself stand still through an act of will. His eyes found her immediately. She stopped 6 feet away from him and waited. "Orla," he said. "Kylem," she said. Something moved through his expression. Not much. just a fraction. Soren had appeared at the edge of the clearing, unhurried, with the particular quality of stillness of someone who had decided to be present without being intrusive. Orla was aware of him the way she was aware of the fire, peripheral, steady. "I came for the pups," Caleb said. "The pups aren't ready to travel," she said. "Our healers." "Your healers weren't there," she said. "I was. I know where they are in their recovery. I'll tell you when they're ready." He looked at her for a long moment. His jaw was set. His hands were at his sides. "You're wearing my cloak," he said. "Someone put it in my things," she said. "I assumed it was a mistake." "It wasn't," he said. The silence stretched. "Then what was it?" she asked. He looked at her, and for a moment something in his face did the thing she had been watching for 4 years and never quite seen. It stopped being controlled and became something else, something that had been pressing against the inside of it for a long time. "I don't know," he said. "I couldn't. The council had made their determination, and I had not formally—" He stopped. Started again. "I couldn't give you what the bond required. I couldn't name it in front of them, and I couldn't let you walk out with nothing." "So you gave me a cloak," she said. "Yes." "And sent me into the snow." "Yes." She looked at him. "That's a very small thing, Caleb." "I know. 5 pups almost died." "I know. I almost died." Something crossed his face that was not almost anything. It was direct and clear, and the kind of expression that cost him something to show. "I know," he said. "I have known that since the second day, and I have been sitting with it since then, and I came here because I couldn't sit with it any longer." She was quiet. Soren had not moved from the edge of the clearing. She was aware of him making a choice not to intervene, which was its own kind of statement. "What do you want?" she asked Kylam. "I want to take you home," he said. "Morvain is not my home," she said. "The council made that determination." "The council was wrong." "You let them be wrong." He absorbed that. "Yes," he said, "I did." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that was not evasion but assembly, as if each word had been picked up and examined before being set down. "Because I have spent 11 years making decisions based on what the pack needed," he said, "and I had learned over those 11 years to stop asking what I needed. And when you arrived, and the bond—" He paused. "The bond was not something I had planned for. I did not know what to do with something I hadn't planned for." "So you let them remove me?" "Yes." "And gave me a cloak?" "Yes." She looked at him for a long time. "That's not enough," she said. "You understand that?" "I do." "What are you offering?" He straightened, not in the way of a man performing authority, but in the way of a man who had made a decision and was now living inside it. "Formal naming," he said, "in front of the council, in front of the pack. I will name the bond publicly and dissolve the council's determination and ask, not command, not expect, to come back. And if I say no," he held her gaze, "then I'll return the pups when you say they're ready, and I'll leave, and I'll live with that." She studied him. The pine ridge was very quiet. "I'm not going to say no," she said, "but I need you to understand something first." "Tell me." "I'm not going back to be managed by a council that will make decisions about my life while you sit at the end of a table and look at your hands," she said. "If I come back as someone who is named, someone who has standing, someone whose word about those pups carries weight in your halls, not as a courtesy, but as a right." He looked at her. "Yes," he said, "I need to hear you say it clearly." "You come back with full standing," he said, "named mate. Your word carries weight." The council answers to me, and I answer to you on matters that concern you." He paused. "That is not a negotiation. That is what I should have offered 4 years ago." The clearing was very still. Then Orla turned to where Soren stood at the edge of it. He was watching her with the expression of a man who had known how this would end and had made his peace with it before it arrived. There was nothing wounded in it, just something quiet and complete. "Soren," she said. "You don't have to explain," he said. "I know. I want to anyway." She paused. "What you offered me was real. The respect was real. The camp was—" She stopped. "It mattered. It matters." "I know," he said. "The pups will need an escort back. I'll provide one." She nodded. He looked at Calum, and something passed between them. Not warmth exactly, but the particular acknowledgement of two men who had both been in the presence of something significant and were choosing to be decent about it. "Take care of her," Soren said. "I intend to," Calum said. They left the next morning. The pups traveled in a lined box on a slow cart, with Orla beside them, and Calum rode alongside rather than ahead, which she noticed and filed away without comment. They did not speak much on the road. There was a great deal to say, and neither of them was in a hurry to say it badly. The silence between them had changed. It was not the silence of suppression or avoidance, but the silence of two people who had said the necessary things and were now in the process of believing them. On the second hour of riding, he said, "The cloak." "Yes," she said, "I did know. When they gave it to you, I had asked them to include it." She looked at him. "I couldn't say it directly?" he said. He paused. "I was a coward about the direct thing. The cloak was the only language I had available." "It was a very quiet language," she said. "I know." "You're going to have to learn a louder one?" Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. "Close enough." "I'm aware," he said. They reached Morvain on the third day. The gate opened before they arrived at it. She didn't know who had sent word ahead, but the courtyard was full when they rode in. Pack members, council elders, the household staff arranged along the walls. Not a welcoming committee exactly, more like a gathering of people who had heard something was happening and had come to see it. Calum dismounted first. He came to the side of the cart and held out his hand. She looked at it for a moment. Then she took it and stepped down. He did not let go. They walked into the center of the courtyard together, and the wolves, the pack wolves that lived in the outer yard, the ones she had never been formally introduced to in 4 years of living in the territory, began to go still. Not in a ripple this time, all at once as if someone had given a signal. Then, one by one, they lowered their heads. The council elder at the front of the gathered crowd opened his mouth. Calum spoke first. "I am naming the bond," he said, his voice carried without effort. "Formally, publicly, before the pack and the council, Orla is my mate. The previous determination is dissolved. She returns with full standing." He paused. "If anyone on this council has an objection, they may bring it to me privately. It will not change the outcome, but I will hear it." Another pause. "That is all." The elder closed his mouth. The courtyard was very quiet. Then, from somewhere in the back of the gathered pack, a child's voice said, with the particular clarity of someone who had not yet learned to modulate important observations, "She's still wearing his cloak." A ripple of something moved through the crowd. Not laughter exactly, something warmer. Orla looked down at the cloak. Then she looked up at Calum. "Apparently I've been announcing it for 9 days, she said. "Apparently," he said. "You could have told me. You were busy keeping 5 pups alive." "That's a reasonable excuse," she said. "I'll allow it." Something in his face did the thing again, the thing that cost him something to show. but this time he let it show fully, without pulling it back. "Come inside," he said. "It's cold." "It was colder 9 days ago," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." She looked at him. The courtyard was still watching, but she found she didn't mind. "I know you are," she said, and she meant it. The council meeting was the following morning. Orla did not attend it. She was in the healer's wing, which had been reassigned to her, not restored, reassigned, which was a different thing, a better thing. And she was checking the pups who had been installed in a warm room off the main corridor and were causing a minor sensation among the household staff. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Calum came to find her afterward. He stood in the doorway of the healer's wing and looked at her. She had 2 on her lap and was making notes in the margin of a treatment record, and he said, "It's done." "Any objections?" 3. "All noted, all overruled." "Good." She looked up. "How are you?" He seemed briefly surprised by the question. "Fine," he said. That was a flat answer. It was an honest one. She tilted her head. "You've been carrying this for 11 years, she said. "The habit of making decisions based on what the pack needs. That doesn't stop being a habit because you named a bond in a courtyard." He was quiet. "Come in," she said. "Sit down. You're blocking the light." He came in. He sat down, not across from her, but beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. 2 opened one pale eye, assessed the new presence, and went back to sleep. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Not the political part, He paused. "The part where I stopped deciding alone." "I know," she said. "We'll figure it out." "You're very calm about it." "I spent 9 days in a mill and a traveling camp keeping 5 newborns alive," she said. "I have recalibrated my definition of difficult." He looked at 2, sleeping on her lap. Something in his expression was very quiet. The stillness of something that had finally stopped bracing. "I should have named it 4 years ago," he said. "Yes," she agreed. "I was afraid of—" "I know what you were afraid of," she said. "You can tell me the whole of it later. We have time." She paused. "We have a great deal of time if you stop wasting it." He looked at her. "I'm going to stop wasting it," he said. "Good," she said. "Start by telling me what you want for dinner. I've been eating camp food for 9 days, and I have opinions about what should happen next." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. Closer than before. "Whatever you want," he said. "That's not an answer." "I haven't had a preference about dinner in 11 years, he said. "Give me a moment." She waited. "Lamb," he said finally. "If there is any." "There's always lamb in a pack holding," she said. "That's practically a law." She made a note in the margin of the treatment record, not about the pups, about the lamb. Then she looked up. "One more thing." "Yes?" She reached up and unclasped the cloak from her shoulders. It pooled in her lap, heavy and warm, smelling of pine resin and something she had finally placed. Wood smoke from his study, she thought, or something close to it. She held it out to him. He took it, looked at it for a moment. "You could keep it," he said. "I know," she said, "but you should give it to me properly this time." He looked at her, then he stood, shook the cloak out once, and settled it back around her shoulders with both hands, carefully, the way you handle something you intend to keep. "There," he said. "Better," she said. The formal ceremony was held on the 15th day. It was not an elaborate affair. Calum had asked her what she wanted, which had taken her a moment to process because she had not been asked that in some time, and she had said small, and he had made it small. The courtyard, the pack, the council in attendance but not presiding. Brea had come from the Thornvale camp with an escort and a gift from Soren. A letter brief, which Orla read privately, and which said, in Soren's characteristic, precise language, "You chose well. Both of you. The pups are lucky." And then below that, "If you ever need a cartographer's license for the Thornvale border region, the offer stands." She showed it to Calum. He read it. "He's a decent man," he said. "He is," she agreed. "You should send him something." "I already did." She looked at him. "The contested mill," he said. "I transferred the deed to Thornvale territory. It seemed appropriate." She considered this. "That's very good," she said. "I'm capable of good decisions," he said, "when I'm not being a coward." "You're going to have to stop calling yourself that." "Eventually," he said. The ceremony itself was brief. Calum spoke the naming in front of the pack, and the pack responded the way packs respond to things that have been true for a long time and have finally been said aloud, with a kind of collective exhale, as if everyone had been holding a breath they hadn't known they were holding. The wolves in the outer yard went still. Then they lowered their heads, all of them, in a long, slow wave from the gate inward. The child who had spoken in the courtyard 9 days ago was there again, standing near the front of the gathered pack with the focused attention of someone taking notes. When the wolves lowered their heads, the child turned to the adult beside them and said, at a volume that carried, "She did that before, too, when she came in. Did everyone see that?" "We saw it," the adult said. "Good," the child said, with satisfaction. "I just wanted to make sure." Orla looked at Calum. He was looking at the child with an expression that was, for the first time in her observation of him, completely unguarded. "Whose child is that?" she asked quietly. "My sister's youngest," he said. "He's 6. He has opinions about everything." "He's right about everything, too," she said. "I know. It's alarming." She laughed. It was a short sound, surprised out of her, and she felt him go very still beside her in the particular way he went still when something caught him off guard in a way he liked. "What?" she said. "Nothing," he said. "I hadn't heard that before." "My laugh?" "Yes." She looked at him. "You'll hear it again." "I'm counting on it," he said. That evening they sat by the fire in his study. The pups had been transferred to the pack's nursery, where they were now the responsibility of a rotating team of handlers who had been thoroughly briefed by Orla and were, she felt cautiously optimistic, up to the task. 1 had graduated to actual nursing. 5 had opened both eyes. 2 was still her favorite, which she did not say aloud because she was a professional. The study was warm. There was lamb. There was bread and something that turned out to be a soft cheese from the Caldermere region, which Calum had apparently requested specifically, and which she found she had strong opinions about in a positive direction. They ate mostly in silence, but it was the right kind of silence. At some point, he said, "What would you have done if I hadn't come?" She thought about it. "Stayed in Thornvale for a while," she said. "Gotten the pups healthy. Figured out what came next." "With Soren?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe. He's a good man." "He is," Calum said. He looked at the fire. "I was afraid of that." "You should have been," she said. "You nearly lost me to someone who saw me clearly on the 2nd day." He was quiet. "What made you come?" she asked. "Really, not the diplomatic version." He looked at his hands, then up at her. "The scout told me you were wearing the cloak," he said. "And I thought, she's still wearing it. After everything. She kept it." He paused. "And I realized I had been telling myself the bond was something the pack couldn't accommodate, something the council had determined, something I couldn't name in front of them. And the truth was simpler and worse than that. Tell me the simpler, worse thing, she said. I was afraid that if I named it, you might not want it, he said. After 4 years of me not naming it, I was afraid it was too late. She looked at him for a long moment. It was almost too late, she said. I know. Don't do that again. I won't, he said. I'm done deciding alone. She nodded. Then she reached over and took a piece of the cheese, which was very good, and ate it and looked at the fire. The pups need names, she said. Actual names. Not 1 through 5. That's a healer's organizational system, he said. It's an effective one, she said. But they're pack pups. They should have names. I'll ask the council to. No, she said. You and I will name them. Together, tomorrow. He looked at her. All right, he said. Good. The fire burned low between them. Outside, the frost had settled on the stone of the courtyard, and somewhere in the outer yard, a wolf made a single low sound that was answered after a moment by another. Kylam reached over, without comment, and added a log to the fire. She watched him do it. You're going to have to learn to ask for help with that too, she said. There are people whose job it is. I'm aware, he said. I've been doing it myself for 11 years. I know, she said. We'll work on it. He settled back. The fire caught and steadied. Orla, he said. Yes. Thank you, he said, for keeping them alive. The pups. She looked at him. They were dying, she said. That seemed like the relevant fact. He was quiet for a moment. It was, he said. It was the only relevant fact. He paused. You've been saying that since the mill. That things are relevant or they're not. That the relevant thing is what you act on. Yes, she said. The bond was always the relevant fact, he said. I just took 11 years to act on it. 9 days, she said. You came in 9 days. After 4 years of not naming it. After 9 days of almost losing it, she said. I'll take 9 days. He looked at her. Something in his face was very still and very open, both at once. You're generous, he said. I'm practical, she said. There's a difference. Is there? Ask me again in a year, she said. I'll have a better answer by then. He nodded. Then, slowly, he reached over and took her hand. Not dramatically, not with ceremony, just the way you reach for something you've decided to stop leaving on the table. She let him. The fire burned. The frost settled. Somewhere in the nursery, 5 pups slept in a warm room with actual names waiting for them in the morning. The cloak was on the hook by the study door. It had always belonged there. Pack, that's where we leave them. Orla, who walked out of a gate with a wool cloak and a medical kit and found 5 dying pups in the snow and kept them alive through sheer stubbornness and relevance. Kylam, who spent 4 years deciding alone and 9 days learning what that cost. And Soren, who saw her clearly on the 2nd day and was decent about it when it mattered. Here's what I want to know. When Kylam heard she was still wearing the cloak, that she'd kept it through 9 days of cold and camp and a rival king's honest offer. Was that the moment he finally understood what the bond had been trying to tell him, or did he already know, sitting at that long stone table, looking at his hands? Tell me in the comments. And if you know someone who needs a story about a woman who kept 5 pups alive in a snowdrift and refused to be managed by a council, send them this one. That's a gift. I'll see you in the next one.